Good afternoon, everybody. Today I would like to speak about the Age of Transition. The Age of Transition is the period in between the Augustan Age and the Romantic movement. The Augustan Age, which we have already studied, as you know, was the period in which censorship was abolished at the end of the 17th century, and we witnessed the rise of the novel, the rise of journalism. It was a very intense period for English literature. The period in between this age and the Romantic movement has been called Age of Transition and has been divided into two phases, which some critics have called the Twilight of Classicism and Early Romanticism. Obviously, we're talking about arbitrary labels because in the case of early Romanticism, we cannot speak about a movement because it is lacking all the features that an actual movement must have. But let's have a look at how this transition took place and why it was important and what kind of transformations we can focus on. First of all, we have the Twilight of Classicism. What does it mean? That classicism gradually declines and gives way to different content and form in literature, but not only in literature. As far as types of writing are concerned, the production was mainly related to prose, some poetry, not much drama, even though there were two very famous Irish dramatists called Goldsmith and Sheridan that you can see here on the board. I don't know if it's a bit far away for you to see. They wrote comedy, and their comedy was hilarious, and it was a form of rejection of the sentimentalism of the time. As for prose, what happened in this period, there were three different types of prose that were becoming more and more popular: essay, biography, and history. Let's focus on the essay a minute and on the origin of the word. Essay comes from the French word that was coined by a French writer, Montaigne, and it comes from the French word essayer, to try, to attempt. This is why when we write an essay today, we try to focus on a topic and we try to discuss it. Sometimes also analyzing different points of view, advantages and disadvantages. So among the most important writers of prose in this period, we have Johnson and Burke. Johnson was considered the father of criticism, and Burke was and is still considered one of the most important writers who focused on the concept of the sublime. He wrote a very famous philosophical inquiry in 1759, and in this inquiry he focused on the causes and on the effects of the sublime. In particular, the causes were some natural events or natural phenomena, enormous things versus small things, the ocean versus a spider. These were the causes, and the effects were normally really strong emotions and passions, the strongest of which were terror and distress and astonishment. Burke paved the way for what would then become the substance of the Gothic novel. Gothic novels were inspired by Burke enormously. So during this age of transition, we have this intense transformation and shift from classicism to something new. Critics have also spoken about another phase, another yes, another phase of the age of transition. They have called it early Romanticism, though I have to say that many critics disagree with this categorization and with this name because, as I said, we cannot talk about an actual movement. It is in this period that writers like William Blake, as for poetry, and Mary Shelley started to write. Mary Shelley, obviously, as concerns prose. We have already looked at some of Blake's poetry. We know that Blake is an extremely unique artist, I would say, rather than writer, because he wasn't just a poet. He was also an engraver, a painter, a prophet, and it is actually impossible to categorize him or to label his production considering him as part of a movement. But what we can say is that many critics have considered him the father of Romanticism because of the themes that he introduces into his poetry. For the first time, many of the romantic themes were introduced by such a unique artist that is William Blake. And to conclude, in this period we also have the production of the Gothic novel, as I have already said, inspired and among other things also by Burke's works and by the concept of sublime. As we know, one of the most famous representatives, one of the most popular representatives of this movement today is Mary Shelley. This was the transition phase. It was the period in between the Augustan Age and the Romantic period. Next time we will focus on the Romantic movement, which has also been divided, if it is possible to divide a movement, into the first and the second generation. Even though they were actually overlapping in time, they were very different. They were rather different in terms of themes, content, mood, atmosphere. So next time we will focus on this. Goodbye for now. Bye.